Afternoon, everyone. We're just waiting on Dan joining us. We'll get started in kind of 3-4 minutes time. Okay, so thanks for your patience just now. Hi everyone, Dan, I think you've just joined.
Martin, can you hear me all right?
Hi Dan, how are you doing?
There we go. Right. Apologies.
Excellent. Good. No, I thought I had my headphones off there, but they were actually plugged in. So I just heard a noise from underneath the desk, which was yourself. Not the best of starts, but good. No, I think, yeah, I think we can pretty much get cracking then. Anyone that's joining a little bit late, I'll obviously just come straight in. So, yeah, obviously welcome everyone. Great to see you all here today. Obviously, we're delighted to have Dan Pudwell with us, who you can see on your screen. So Dan's a principal cloud architect at Cloudsoft, and I'll pass over to him shortly. Before I do, we will just run through a couple of things around the group for those of you who are new, and yeah, just kind of go through the agenda as well. So let me just see if I can get the next slide. Can everyone see the slides okay? Yeah? Yeah. Cool. Perfect. So good. That's our mission statement. They are really straightforward in terms of kind of what we're looking to achieve with the group. I think this is our 7th or 8th online meetup so far. So we're based out of the Northeast. But what we're keen to do is really be open to anyone, regardless of location. Obviously, especially as we're online, we're able to reach out to a wide audience. So yeah, we're kind of pushing that as a group. We're really keen for people to get involved. So whether that's you have a topic you'd like to hear about, whether you would like to speak yourself, do get in touch. I'll give you the details at the end. And yeah, we'll do our best to obviously facilitate that. So this event will be recorded and it'll be available on the YouTube channel afterwards. So if you don't want to be on camera, do turn your camera off. we yeah, and obviously a big thanks to Sagiz as well for sponsoring the meetup. So today's agenda really simple. I'll pass over to Dan shortly, as I said, who will kind of present 30 to 40 minutes. We will then do a Q&A after that. What I would say is, if you do have a question, do pop it in the chat. We'll open the floor up afterwards, but yeah, we'll allow kind of 15 minutes for that to run through everything. So yeah, I think without further ado, I will pass you on to Dan. So I'll stop sharing my screen, Dan, and let you pop up your slides.
All right, thank you. Here we go. Okay, so hopefully comes across all right, and that hasn't gone full screen for whatever reason. It's fine. So yeah, so today we're going to talk about kind of serverless CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous delivery or deployment, whatever you prefer, specifically on AWS. I don't have much experience on Azure or Google, but it should, the concepts will be relatable across, the different cloud providers. I'm on Twitter at Dan_Pudwell, if you want to follow, or happy to follow other people as well. And also, as Martin said, I work at Cloudsoft. I've been here for just over 4 months now, and really enjoying it. Really good place to work. If anybody would like to join me, then cloudsoft.io is the website, or message me on Twitter. You can always find me around. So thank you for that, Martin. So kind of slight agenda, things to talk about, kind of the what of what serverless is, what CI/CD is, and how we kind of do those things together on AWS. Why we're doing, why would we want to do these things? What, why is it better than maybe doing it a different way? Who should be involved or doing these things? That would probably be the most kind of controversial part of today. And then how do we do these things? So how is it, practically set up in an AWS account, or, multiple accounts probably. And then there's a little sneak peek as some new AWS functionality as well at the end. So hopefully that'll be a live demo as well. So hopefully that works. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, so this is my own definition of serverless. You'll see this on the top of, aws.com/serverless. There'll be some sort of description of what it means. But essentially it's a way of building, composing applications that are run on a public cloud provider that provides services to the user, the developer, and they can compose or build applications using those services. So essentially you write a lot less code, and these services can be the things that you run, or the glue between things. It just kind of handles and manages a lot of the stuff that you would normally write yourself. And then there's a cost aspect as well. So a lot of times it's a lot cheaper. It's not always the case, but sometimes you sacrifice a little bit of paying more for operational cost savings. So because you don't need, let's say, people to be patching servers anymore. So, you're saving money on, engineers that would be spending their time doing that. So this allows you, a business or a development team to focus more on their actual kind of business logic. What is the point of, their business? If they're just writing kind of middleware or, these plumbing things, they want to focus more on the things that are going to be bringing in more value to the business. And so continuous integration, that's essentially a testing or automated procedure. Although there is a bit where we don't want to actually call it testing per se, it's more checking. There is a kind of this kind of, testing versus checks kind of argument where testing is more thoughtful, kind of more poking. They're kind of running through a set of automated things or just clicking around from a script. Yeah, not generally regarded as testing, I guess. To do CI well, I kind of go for the, as many pull request commits or pull requests that you need to do per feature. So bringing in things like feature flagging is a good practice that you can use to stop changes from going out to, let's say, a production environment. Should back up a second. The things you would do in the CI pipeline, kind of, unit testing, integration testing, linting. You could do security testing as well. There's many different things that you could be doing as part of that CI pipeline. If you can get it under 10 minutes, that's really, really good, because it means that you can do more builds, in a faster time, and hopefully then delivering those changes to users at a faster pace as well. Smaller pull requests, again, I would always advocate for that, because whoever has to review those are then reviewing, lots less code. Hopefully it's easier to figure out what's going on in that pull request, and lead to faster turnaround times for, again, those features to be released out to production. And when we talk about continuous delivery or continuous deployment, so this is where we are automating the release to a production environment. So if it's not a feature flagged sort of feature, we can put that out to production as soon as that that CI process is finished. So if your CI process is 10 minutes long, hopefully it's in production maybe in 15 minutes time. And that's an amazing thing to do, actually. If you can release things to your customers in 15 minutes time, that's a lot of value that you're bringing to the business. Because if you write code and it just sits there, for days or for weeks, or longer, that's not bringing any value to the business at all. So you want to get those changes out as fast as possible. So as we said, why do we want to do this? So we just kind of discussed the business side. From a technical side, doing continuous integration, if your testing is well set up, your coverage is high, hopefully it spots those easy things. And then you can kind of then switch your QA focus and the testing folk that really understand the business domain, really understand the application, who can then press things a little bit harder to find the really hard things that your CI pipeline is not going to be picking up. The other advantage of doing a CI/CD pipeline is that it gets really easy to roll back or to roll forward. So, if there is a mistake that's made, it's just another release. So that can happen, maybe 15 minutes later, there's a fix going into production. So that way of fixing mistakes makes things just super easy. So, releases on a Friday aren't scary because it's such a reliable and fast process. It also can lead to some good experimentation. So we'll come into this shortly, but if you have a good setup test environment as part of your CI pipeline, then being able to kind of experiment with that makes for a much easier development experience as well. This is from the DORA State of DevOps Report 2019, so it's a little bit out of date now. I think the new ones are now coming out from Google. I can't remember, but basically this is maybe traditional things. So I used to work at HMRC, and there was a major release once every 6 months, and it was always a really big exercise to get prepared for this release. And then after the release, there'd always be things to fix. So if you can imagine trying to go from 6 months, maybe down to a day, that's a really big undertaking. And but the benefits will be absolutely amazing, because you don't have to spend all that engineering time building up to that release anymore, or fixing all the things that kind of come out at the last minute. If you're releasing daily, those things get flagged up straight away rather than every 6 months. You don't have to dust off the release process once every 6 months, because it's an automated thing. It happens daily, and it just kind of flows. So this particular table is from organizations that these are basically the practices where organizations have been measured and are in the kind of the poor category, I guess, of practicing CI/CD. If we look at kind of the numbers, I guess, where the time is being spent on things. So if you're looking at deployments, if you're in that low category, you're spending 30% of your time just doing deployments. Whereas, if you're in an automated environment, you're spending maybe 5 to 10% of your time doing deployments. So, that's a 25% more time that the business can now focus on, making things better for the customers, hopefully winning more business. So who does CI/CD? So as I said, this will be the controversial part of the talk. So a lot of, I guess, roles are now coming to be, more advertised around DevOps engineers. I don't think that's a great title for a role, because a DevOps engineer, they'll probably be the ones responsible mainly for a CI/CD pipeline, or setting up environments or accounts or things like that. But if there's only one person, or maybe a couple of people, the rest of the team really has no idea how their code is being run in production, or maybe in a staging environment. So if something does go wrong, other people have to get involved. So I think DevOps is part of a team, and everybody in the team should be responsible for it. It's, I guess, I'm in the it's a culture, not a role sort of category. I don't know if people have heard that before. That's kind of, I guess, the camp that I'm firmly in. And happy to talk about that, I guess, afterwards in the Q&A. But what I've seen when we've done that is, everybody in the team then takes ownership of the build process. Everybody can take ownership of their own pull request from start to finish, from writing the code first line to seeing it, put out into production. And then if there is any production issues, again, I'm part of the you build it, you run it group as well. So, that same person is then responsible for, any production issues, or that team, I should say, is responsible for the production issues. So moving on. So how are we going to do this kind of CI/CD setup? So practically, it's like this essentially. So a person will write a pull request, whether that's a change to a Lambda, maybe a new API gateway route or something gets changed. For us, that was going into GitHub, which triggered a what we call a pull request build. So the top code build job there for PR, which would use a specific CloudFormation template for that environment. Essentially, it built the entire application from the top. It would then get reviewed by a second person at least, merged in, and then it would move from the staging environment after running a couple of tests into our production environment. So if we look at kind of what's going on within that PR build, so it was deploying the entire stack of the application. So, every single Lambda, every single Dynamo table, all of API gateway, or S3 or whatever that application was, was in the template, that was deployed into a new stack as part of this pull request. It would then run some tests against that pull request. So unit testing, obviously checking coverage. linting. You can do some checks obviously before you build the environment as well. Template validation, linting that as well. If you're using Swagger, you can do Swagger validation, or Open API as it's now called. Do any security testing, contract testing, again, if you're using Open API. And then once that environment has been sort of stood up in that pull request environment, you can then do some integration testing. It's important to note, though, this is an ephemeral environment. So as soon as that pull request is closed, as in those changes have now been either decided to be merged, or we're going to close this pull request because maybe it was just for a bit of experimentation. So that whole stack disappears. So these are very short-lived environments and stacks that just come up for a brief period of time and then go away. So this is kind of back to that 10-minute ideal build time of running. So this stack might only be around for 10 minutes while it moves through this build process. But it's done all of the automated testing it needs to as part of this build process. If we look at what that testing pyramid then looks like, so there's a lot of unit tests that should happen, a few maybe kind of service or integration tests, and then if you're into maybe doing the same process on a front end, maybe like a React build, you can then do those UI tests. Obviously, they take longer, cost a bit more money as well in terms of time, and well, maybe resource usage as well. So yeah, this is the ideal scenario for doing the testing through a CI process. The staging build, as we saw in the diagram, it's exactly like production, should be a clone. Instead of creating an entirely new stack, it will update an existing stack that's already there. If you have any migrations to run, maybe if you're using RDS Aurora or something, SQL database, make sure that those migrations run properly. You can then run some smoke tests, a few integration tests to make sure roughly everything is kind of wired up properly. Maybe if you've made some changes to some IAM permissions or something, you want to make sure that those are right. But it's important to note this is all automated. So there's no manual gate at this point. So the next thing it does, those smoke tests run fine. It would trigger the production deployment, which then just goes straight out, out the door, and hopefully to the users. So good practice for doing this kind of CI/CD process is where you can run the unit tests locally. I'll touch a little bit later on kind of doing the integration test locally. Pairing is always a good practice. TDD is a good practice. There's a really great talk by a man named Ian Cooper. Does a great couple of talks actually on TDD on YouTube. I would definitely go and watch those. Yeah, if you can get that pull request out to production in less than an hour, Dora will class you as an elite performer. But I will always stress that you need to do some manual testing in quotes there, as in, get those QA folk to look at the hard problems. They don't need to be clicking around. That's what automated testing can do. You want those people to be looking at the really, really hard things to find, because that's what your users are going to find eventually as well. Definitely. Right, so we just mentioned a second ago around kind of this integration test locally thing. So that's been typically the kind of point where serverless, I'm not going to say it falls down, but coming from, let's say a traditional kind of development background where you have, server running, you put some code on the server, you can run that local stack in a Docker container. And that's what SemLocal does. It runs, Lambda, the Lambda function as a Docker container. I don't recommend this approach. I would advocate getting into your cloud environment as soon as possible. So in the process that I outlined, where you had the pull request environment, that is essentially your local testing environment is that pull request environment. When we saw the the ideal build, it will take between 5 and 10 minutes to get there. That's unfortunate. There's something I'm going to show you hopefully in a couple of minutes that will be a lot better. But yeah, that was I guess the fall down of doing sort of or trying to do that local development feedback loop in a fast way. The only thing I guess I would say around that is, if you're going to be doing local development, as in you want to get your code written and everything before you go into a cloud, try and do TDD and running local testing on your machine before it goes out. So you can make sure that given an input to a Lambda, my code's going to run this. That's hopefully a fairly simple thing to be unit testing. And then if you're happy with your unit testing, theoretically, that should work once you go up into your cloud environment. Obviously, that doesn't always work, which is why you do testing in a production-like area as well. Yeah. So as we said, there is another way, I guess, that we can do this. So this is new. This only came out a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if people are aware of this or have heard of it, but there's a tool that that AWS came out with called SAM, which is the Serverless Application Model, and there's two parts to it. There's a bit of kind of CloudFormation extension stuff that you can use to basically create resources easily in CloudFormation with serverless kind of defaults, I guess. The second part is a SAM CLI tool. So that's what we're going to kind of look at very soon. So using the SAM CLI tool and this new kind of SAM Accelerate kind of branded way of doing things, you can essentially do a watch on your application and sort of locally develop, but in the cloud. So if you think of, if anybody's done unit testing with Jest before, I'm sure maybe other unit test providers can do this. I think Python does it with PyTest. You can actually watch your unit tests. So you can, write a test, write some code, and the watch command is essentially looping the whole time and will execute the test as soon as the file has been saved. This works exactly the same way. So as soon as you update your application code or your SAM template or your dependencies or any sort of thing, it will sync that to the cloud environment. But the great thing about this is that you don't have to wait for CloudFormation. So this will sync directly to the Lambda service, Dynamo, API gateway, whatever else is in that SAM template, almost instantly. So I was just trying it out this morning, and it was like a couple of seconds to see changes that I've made in a Lambda are then reflected in AWS, which I found absolutely amazing, actually. So there's a few constraints, maybe caveats to that. Obviously, because you're not using CloudFormation, you will get some drift from the original CloudFormation stack. This is not meant to be a production sort of thing, as in don't use SAMsync in production, because then your CloudFormation stack is not going to match at all with with what you've got in your template. But it's a great tool to use in kind of local development, probably even before you create that pull request. And yeah, it just makes that local development feedback loop much shorter, much faster, and much easier to develop, I think, in AWS. So, but it's also in beta. So that's the other caveat, is It's not quite generally available yet, and I'm sure they're still working on it. But signs are looking pretty good so far. Right, so we're coming just to the end. So just to reference a couple of things. So I mentioned Dora before. There's also a really great book by a guy named Tom McLaughlin, who wrote Serverless DevOps. So he talks a lot about kind of the I guess who would be the the operations people, the systems admins and that, where if you're looking at serverless, there isn't it's more development focused. There's not really a place, I guess, for operations people, but there is. It's just not on their own. It's just more in the team. So if we come back to kind of the the DevOps as a team culture sort of thing, then you want that operations person in your team, and they could be the person who is mainly responsible for all of this stuff. And if you think about T-shaped people, that's their that's maybe their focus, but then everybody else across the team has that sort of broad knowledge of also what's going on across kind of the DevOps space in that team. There's also this demo application I made a little while ago now. There's not the SAM Accelerate stuff in it. This was made a long time before that. But if you do want to check out a bit of kind of CI/CD stuff in a kind of Lambda-based application, I made this kind of example thing a little while ago. Hopefully it still works. I think it did when I was checking it out last month. So please look at that. And that's it. So now over to live demo time. So yeah, quickly have a look at the SAM sync command. So if you're familiar with SAM, there's a few kind of other SAM CLI commands like SAM build, SAM deploy, SAM init to start a new kind of serverless application in a project. We're going to go straight to the SAM sync. So actually, just before that, I do have kind of this project structure. So I've got a template that has a few resources in it. So we'll quickly have a look at that. You can see there's a couple Lambda functions and an API gateway there. So it's not a huge amount, but it's enough to kind of work as a nice example. Yeah, if we just run this now. So what this command is going to do is kind of create that sort of base stack for us. So you can see it's doing a bunch of things. It's syncing up to CloudFormation. If we go to CloudFormation, let's have a look. So just refresh this so we can see it's creating some things for us. So there's our blog stack. This is a kind of our main stack. We also have this other thing that SAM sync is doing for us. So it's actually gone and created a new stack, a nested stack. And the only role for this stack is to handle any dependencies that are in my Lambda functions. So if we quickly look at our Lambda functions dependencies, we can see, yeah, we've got one dependency on requests. It's not a huge amount, but Sam's gone to the trouble of creating a layer just to handle that. So if we had more, there would be a lot more there in that. There is a layer per function. It's not every function getting the same layer, but as a developer, I don't need to think about that. It's handling that for me, which is quite nice. And that's what you want from a serverless application. The less, the developer kind of needs to focus on, the better. They can just focus on their code. So as we can see, our sync is completed. So if we go back to CloudFormation, creates complete, great. So we've got our blog stack. If we go to this URL, we should see a greeting. Yeah, great. So we've got some stuff coming out. If we go back to our code now, let's have a look at the hello world code. So that was sending out basically hello world, how are you, with a location. So if we look, yep, oh, hello world, howdy. So did I go to the greeting one? I must have gone to the greeting one. I've gone to the greeting one. All right, let's go to the hello world one. Okay, yeah. Hello world, how are you? And there's my location. So yeah, that looks a little bit better. So if we change that to be, no, hello world, I am Dan, right? So if we have a look at our watch, it's already sending that new function up to AWS for us. It's actually finished syncing it. So if I go and refresh that page, I can see that the code is now changed, right? So it's now that quick. If I want to do another change, let's say I want to use a different dependency. So we're going to bring in photo 3 this time. Okay, so you can change that on the fly, add in new dependencies, and it will update the layer, which is then going to update the version that the Lambda function is using. It takes a little bit longer this time because there's a little bit more going on, but it's still super quick. Yeah, done. Obviously, I can't really show that because there's nothing to see on a browser window for that. But trust me, that's finished. Yeah. So that's it really. That's done. So I'll just stop sharing, and I guess back to Martin, and I guess any questions that maybe people have.
Yes, thanks very much for that, Dan. Really interesting. So yeah, the floor is open if you want to pick Dan's brains about anything there, or of course any comments on anything that was said. So just pipe up, I suppose, is the best way.
I guess it wasn't that controversial then.
No, I was thinking surely someone's going to disagree with you, Dan.
Yeah, no questions, but I just want to say thank you, Dan, for a very interesting talk and demo of SAM, AWS SAM. Really interesting to know that. Thank you.
No problems. Thank you.
This has been a while when I see something that impressed. Previously saw the scaffold tool for Kubernetes, like doing the same thing, just watch and refresh everything. So this is really impressive.
Yeah. When I was first using this last week, I was blown away by how fast it was, and just how easy it was to kind of do this development now. I think it's going to be fairly game changing in the serverless world.
Anyone else? Any comments?
Yeah, I have a question. So can this be integrated with Jenkins and the Git repository?
Yeah. So instead of using code build, there's no reason why you couldn't use something like Jenkins. The only thing I would say, I guess, is you've got to run Jenkins on an EC2 server, or wherever else you maybe are running Jenkins. But yeah.
Can we really achieve the serverless if we run it on a EC2 instance? If Jenkins are running on a EC2 instance, so we need to have a dedicated instance for that. Yes,
that's kind of, I guess, the point against it is that it's a thing that's running on a machine somewhere that you then have to maintain. I would probably go for something like Circle CI or Code Build or Azure DevOps or whatever. That it's a managed service that does those builds for you, and there's loads of them now. There's a whole bunch of different services that are very good. There's even so we did this process not just for like a backend kind of build, Lambda based application. We did the same build process with front end applications that are built in React, or you could use Vue or whatever. We also did it for mobile applications. So we were using a different build tool called Bitrise because it had some nice integrations with the iOS store and the App Store and the Play Store for Google. But it was great because because it went through the same process that every other code was going through, the build process was then just a generic template, because it was building a pull request as an artifact thing that could then be tested. And then you go through and you create this kind of staging artifact, and then you take your production thing at the end, APK or IPA, whatever the Apple one's called, and then that could just go straight up to the store, all part of the automated process.
Okay. So how about logs? So as you said, it's a serverless. So once the run is completed, so I just wanted to see the logs, what happened to my previous build. So I can still go back and see the logs. It can be stored somewhere for the access.
Yeah, definitely. So if you're using something like code build, obviously the code build logs will be there. If you want to keep the application logs, as in, the Lambda logs, past the deletion of the Lambda, you'll have to have something set up probably outside of the stack, like termination protection, I think, to keep those logs, I guess. Or you could keep the stack going for a little bit longer because it's serverless. You're not actually paying for it at that point. So, those logs can just be sat there waiting for you to peruse whenever you need to. It gets a bit cluttered though in CloudFormation if you've got stacks lying around.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Dan, for all the.
Interesting. Yeah, we've just, I'm on a project now, and we weren't allowed to set up a bare metal Mac instance, an EC2 Mac instance. Okay. They're crazy. So so I was testing CI, Circle CI, Code Magic, and I went with Bitrise. There's so that's gone through the workflows today. Now they're pretty much finalized. But do you have any tips on it? There's an awful lot of UI and everything, but it does do a lot of the heavy lifting. It's very intuitive. But
Bitrise, it's a really good tool. I'll be honest, I didn't set up a lot of it. Somebody else did. Then they left, and then I had to get into it a little bit more. But it is a very graphical tool, drag and drop kind of workflow sort of thing. You can also put in your custom bits if you need to.
We got the official, the iOS piece. It's been banging the head, all that certificates and provisioning profiles, but we've got it all working now. But
excellent.
It's painful.
I think using any tool with iOS stuff around this provisioning profiles, distribution setup thing, it is difficult, definitely really difficult. I don't think Apple's done a great job of making that easy.
No, not at all. But interesting that there's other people using it. It's good. And thanks for the talk. It was really good.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you.
Cool. Anyone else? Anything to add? Any questions for Dan? This is basically a free hit at Dan, so and you don't have to pay for it.
That's right. I can take it.
Exactly.
I just actually one more thing I'd like to add. So we also run a Serverless North East Meetup. It's on the last Thursday of each month, except for December, because that would be, I think, Boxing Day or something. We're going to skip that one. But we've got one on next week at the Northern Design Center, if you're in Gateshead, just on the next to the Sage. And we've got two really good speakers. There's a person from Scott Logic, Mark Jose. He's really, really good. I don't know if people have heard him speak before. Very good speaker. He did a talk, I think, last year at the Build It Right conference. And we've got another guy, Marco Angelo, who I used to work with, who is also very good. He's going to be talking more about, Mark is going to be talking about Google Cloud stuff. I think Firebase as well. And Marco is going to be talking more about front-end stuff on AWS. So kind of covers a lot of bases there. So if anybody's interested in joining us, there is pizza and beer. It is an in-person event, so not a Zoom thing. So hope to see you guys there.
Yeah, absolutely. There might be a few here that I've heard Mark speak as well previously. We had him a couple of times ago, different topic though. So no, as you say, he's very good indeed. Marco, I don't know, but sounds like a really good event, and I think nice that we can get back to meeting face to face as well. I think that'll be certainly something we'll look at doing when we can. But yeah, no, absolutely do get along. It's you can register on Meetup, I think, Dan. Yeah, just if you have
meetup.com.
Yeah,
look for Serverless North East. We're there.
Cool, perfect. If there's no other questions, then I think we could probably just wrap up. Yeah, cool. I'll share the kind of final slides. Yeah, so much like yourself, Dan, with the serverless group, we're taking a bit of time out in December. I think everyone's probably got enough on their plates with Christmas shopping and Christmas nights out and whatever it is. And yeah, we'll be back in January. We've got Chloe Sanderson, also ex-Scott Logic, actually. I think she knows Mark Joes. It's quite a small community that we have, but based up in Edinburgh. She's now at user testing. So she's a UX designer, essentially. She'll be speaking on product design. Still to get the actual topic confirmed, but she's very good as well. So again, maybe a bit of a different direction for us as we try and cover off a lot of different areas that we think could be interesting for people. Again, if you've got any ideas or topics, do get in contact. My email address is down there. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. We have YouTube channel. If you want to sign up, we'll be putting all the everything will go live on that. Well, not live as such, but it'll be accessible on that probably this afternoon or tomorrow. So do feel free to share that. So I think all that remains really is a big thanks to Dan. Really interesting talk. So thanks for taking the time and supporting us, Dan. And yeah, have a great Thursday, and hope to see you all again soon.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.